All right.
Was that all?
That was all a flub. Sorry, guys. As I said, can you hear me now? Yes. All right. There's still people complaining about the shame, yes. Here we go. I'm going to fix it. I will fix it. All right.
While you do that, I can't open the top of my ink pots, which isn't very clever.
Okay. Well, okay. Can you hear me now? Yes, boy. This is... I hope that means that they can. But we won't know for another second or two because it takes them a little minute to respond. Okay, good. It sounds like there's... Yes, all right, good. Bradley Cooper. Bradley Cooper, really? Nice to see you, Bradley. A big fan of your movies. Yes, all right, good. Okay, I'm going to have to start. We're going to have this conversation again. It's fine. So I'm sorry, guys. We just spent 4 minutes doing our mime act. And, okay, so now I'll talk to you again. And I will explain where I am and what I'm doing. These are the vagaries of technology. So right now, I am in London. I've just come here yesterday from Amsterdam by train. Arrived last night. And JJ and I are staying with our friend Lucinda Rogers, who lives in London, obviously, in... What is the name of it? Is it
Shoreditch?
It is Shoreditch, yeah. So Shoreditch is the name of the neighborhood, and it's a beautiful, beautiful neighborhood and a beautiful old street. And Lucy is a fantastic artist. I hope you've had a chance to see her work. If not, I put a link so you can see her portfolio. But right now we are in her studio, and the studio is about 10 or 15 minutes away on a place called, is it Ermine Alley?
Ermine Mews.
Ermine Mews. So it's such a nice sort of English name, Ermine Mews. And yeah, so we're here in her studio, and we are going. And here she is.
Hello.
Hi. There she is. Okay, sorry about that. Yes. So so I have another camera which I have aimed at Lucy's work, and we're going to see that in a second. Let me just split the screen here so you can see that. Anyway, so we are going to be able to watch Lucy draw, and I'm going to do some drawing, and I'm hoping that you will also be able to do some drawing. Here we go. This is a split screen, and the idea is that we are going to draw the room that we're in. So we can't, unfortunately, we're limited by the number of cameras I have here with me on this road trip. So we're going to just draw whatever room we're in. So if you're in a room, hopefully you are, you can just draw that room, and we're going to draw this room, and we're going to watch, more importantly, we're going to watch Lucy draw as well, and that will be the most exciting part of this. So, yes, so let me just make myself small, and we will start, we'll get to work, and we'll have a conversation while we're working. So there we go. All right. There's Lucy, and there she is, she's starting to draw. There we go, good. All right, good. So hopefully you can hear me from that microphone there. Yeah. So we were talking about a trip that you took to New York. How long ago was it?
2013 Christmas.
Oh, that's good. You remember
Yeah.
that well.
Yeah.
Right. So quite a long time ago, and you stayed in my house, and you went out and drew. As you said, it was Christmas, so it was cold, and you were drawing in Chinatown. But you've drawn in New York many times before, right?
Yes. I started going there in 1988, very long time ago. And I carried on going, and I've been 26 times.
26 times?
Yeah, altogether in my life.
Wow.
And I have been amassing drawings all over throughout that time, including a big lot of work between about 1988 and 2002. That was probably the most, the time that was the most productive. And so those drawings which were done so long ago are actually quite sort of historic in some ways, just tiny little details like what the cabs looked like or what the street crossings looked like are all sort of, maybe changed now, a sort of record
Yeah, I mean, cabs certainly don't look alike. And
no.
I mean, the city itself has changed a lot. But
Yeah.
what is it about New York that's made you come 26 times?
I can't really explain it. It's a sort of chemical reaction I had when I saw it. I just was completely bowled over. I just loved to see the stuff that seemed so familiar from films, but it was also very more than that, more than just the movies. It was just the excitement of seeing the very simple, sort of almost the most sort of daily life of New York was just beautiful. I just thought it beautiful, and I love things like a corner where a street corner where you can see two sides of a building even. It's just very, it's very gorgeous.
But I mean, you live in such a beautiful city to draw as well.
Well, I think
do you feel differently about that?
Yes, I think I do, really.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes it is difficult to see your own place as well.
Yeah.
I think it's typical is the outsider, the outsider sees more perhaps. I mean, I remember when I went to New York and I saw that wonderful book, Here is New York by Sasek.
Yeah, he's the...
wow,
he's Hungarian?
Yes.
He's Hungarian. He's done that whole series. He did one in London as well. But
yes, he did one in lots of places, but he is the classic sort of, outsider looking in, and just wonderful detail.
His style is so different from yours, though, don't you think?
Yes, it is. I mean, it is more of a, in a way, children's book style, but I still love the sort of level of sort of inquiry, the amount of things he goes into, the detail that he notices. Yeah.
Now tell me about your process, because you're obviously starting with. I mean, one of the things I love about your drawings, and I've tried and failed to rip you off by copying your use of big, thick lines, because I never know when you do them. And I know I've asked you about this before, and it seems like in some ways they're the first things you do, but then there are also other ones that come up at different times. Tell us a bit about what you're doing with line quality and line thickness.
When I look at a scene, I just seem to somehow notice the whole composition, the scene as a composition, and so in that composition there are important bits and not so important bits, and somehow it's almost like Japanese art where there's just a kind of the main lines are put in, and I just see those main lines as a sort of illustrating the whole, and then I put those in like I have been doing here.
And so
it's sort of not decided in advance. It's sort of what.
So the first thing that strikes you is the first.
Yeah.
But you'll do. But like now you're drawing. It's nothing to do with the size necessarily of things. Like you were just drawing the fairly small details.
Yeah.
But are you also like setting yourself landmarks? So you're saying these are the things that I'm then going to come back to? Yes,
that's true. Also, I find that in the same way that when you're doing a painting, a painting is usually a pattern of colour across the painting, and a painter is always thinking about the whole and the distribution of marks and colours and shapes across the whole painting.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's just a drawing, I tend to the line width is the kind of the line width is distributed across the whole, if that makes sense.
So it's as if you have a certain...
You sort of have a palette of line widths, let's say. Yeah. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I wanted to understand more about that. A palette. So you mean you have certain kinds of lines that evoke certain things. So are they architectural things? Like, in other words, is it the main sort of supports of the building that
yes, can be, yeah. Or it can also be, well, no, this doesn't really make sense here, but it could be something to do with the foreground and the background as well. Or just an abstract shape, really.
Sorry, I'm just double checking that this is actually still working, because we're working in a weird location, but it seems like it is. Okay, yes.
Yeah. So it's to do with abstraction, really, actually.
So you're not necessarily thinking about what the things mean that you're drawing with thick lines. You're not saying.
In fact, that's a great comment. Yeah.
So it's not.
I think if we start thinking, what am I drawing? Oh, I'm doing something completely wrong, by the way. This is completely wrong.
Well, nobody
not concentrating. Yeah, that's actually very important, I think. If you're thinking, right, now I am drawing a can and next to it is a banana, you're thinking of each thing on its own, when in fact the can and the banana are making a new shape, or they're making something new, so the juxtaposition is what it's actually about.
So you're not drawing a canana. You're drawing.
You are drawing a canana.
So you have to make.
You're not really trying. It's best to sort of rid your mind of what you think you're drawing, and just look at shapes. Yeah. Shapes.
But I find when I've tried to draw those very strong lines, they overwhelm me in a way. Like I feel like I don't know how to integrate them so that they feel balanced. I think that's one of the problems. Like that I feel like when I look at your drawings, I don't just see the big heavy lines. I see the overall connection between all of them. But I find when I'm doing it, my big fat lines look like they're saying too much.
Yeah. Well, I don't really know how to.
It's like a musical instrument where, like, suddenly the drummer is too loud or something like that. Yeah. Instead of it being composed.
I mean, I don't think there's any reason to use this combination of lines, really. It's just something that I've just developed, or not deliberately even. It's just sort of how I sort of see things. But so yes, I can imagine that it might be peculiar to use these strong lines.
But you also work in these sort of fragments. Like, in other words, you're not drawing. I mean, some people might draw the whole structure of the whole scene and then add more and more detail.
Yeah.
Or somebody else might say, I'm going to start in the upper left-hand corner and work my way across the whole page.
Yes.
And do things. Or I'll often draw a contour around various things, and then I just kind of keep adding more. But you're almost like hopping around.
Yeah, because
why is that?
Well, I think I remember being taught. I think I've lost my pen. I remember being really taught this thing about keep an eye on the whole picture. It's the whole. Mm-hmm. So don't, start in one corner. Well, you can do anything, of course, but if you want to have the whole be a sort of harmonious thing, you need to sort of keep an eye on all the bits. And I always remember seeing the unfinished work of the Pre-Raphaelites, which was bizarre because the unfinished work of the Pre-Raphaelites looks like literally magazine cutouts. In other words, it looks like collage because there are these incredibly finished bits, like a whole person will be finished here in the corner.
Right, but it's got a hard edge and they haven't drawn any context.
No, and the rest of the picture isn't done yet.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So they used to do these very, very sort of literal painted things. And I mean, it's just that I was sort of taught really that that was not what to do. It was more important to have the thing, see the whole thing as a whole, because you've decided that this is the size of your canvas. You know, this is your canvas, and unless you're going to just do a vignette, you know, which is floating on the page, which of course that's fine, but if you've decided to use the whole page, I think you have to think about the whole page sort of thing. Across the whole page, be thinking what's happening, and sort of this sort of distribution of lines and detail and things.
Now, you took a couple of measurements, right, beforehand, so you knew kind of what was in the top, bottom, left, and right. Is that an important thing to have worked down?
Yes, that is quite important. I mean, I think that, for example, when your eye can be very deceiving, and you think, oh yeah, that's that and that's that, but this is actually very difficult. So how big is that window? This is the window here, where we can see the clouds outside and the railway, but how big is it in relation to the rest? It sort of looks big, but actually it's quite small. It's just a funny.
Let's have a look at it. I'm just going to turn this around.
Yeah, have a look at the scene.
See if you can see what you're seeing. That's sort of it, I think. Yeah, so that's more or less the view there. Through the window, and you can see the table below.
So yes, and that, so it's the sort of combination of these different bits, because if you draw everything the same, then you may as well, that's where, you know, you literally may as well take a photograph, because the camera, you know, draws everything the same, sees everything, broadly speaking, the camera sees everything, doesn't it, when it points at the thing?
Yeah, it doesn't distinguish necessarily,
no,
except for focal points. Unless
with focal, yeah.
Right.
But we can make anything our focus. That's the wonderful thing about it.
So like in this case, you might be saying, I'm going to focus on these pens and brushes rather than the view out the window.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to just give you a lot of detail there, because that's what seems interesting to me.
Yeah. So this is the next, so I'm looking into the next person's, we share it between 4, so it's sort of divided up the studio. So this is the next person's stuff.
Tell me about drawing with. So you draw with a brush so far, and now you're drawing with a dip pen with steel nib.
Yeah.
Do you care much about the nibs themselves?
Yes.
You do. You have a very specific kind of thing.
Yes.
Like? Yeah. What's that about?
Well,
what is the nib that you like? Why?
I can never remember the name, but
it's very fine. It's almost
it's very fine. But the important thing, it's very strong, but it's bendy.
Flexible. Yeah.
Yeah. So the ones that are really cheap are very annoying, because they're so bendy that when you press, then they flick, and if you don't want that, it's very annoying. So it's the steel nib has got to be strong but also flexible.
So compared to using, say, a technical marker or rapidograph or something like that, these lines are much more responsive. Right?
Yes.
And so you can also use the same pen to get very fine lines or much thicker ones.
Yeah, you can actually, but of course, but then you have. Oh, actually, this is not working. But the other interesting part is that obviously that you dip the nib, and then the ink runs out. So there's a thick line with the nib, but then I'm running out of ink, so I have to do it gets thinner.
Right, so when you draw a really thick line, you're going to use up a lot of ink doing it, and you probably won't get much out of it. So then you resort to drawing thinner ones.
Actually, no, that's not quite true.
Yeah?
Actually, that was to do with the pressure I was putting on it. But I mean, actually, so we could do an experiment of how. Okay, I dip the pen, see how long it actually lasts before the ink runs out. Not very long, it's run out,
Right.
see? So that's the length of the line. So you have that much time, and you see then the line is getting thinner and more delicate.
Well, it's alive. I mean, I really
Yes,
like drawing
it
with
is.
a pen like this too, because there's also something about the kind of breaths that happen between dipping it into the ink, right? So you can sort of grab that much visual information, get it down, and then you have to fill up your pen, and you have to go back and look at what you're drawing again, and
Yes.
kind of get a fresh snapshot of information.
Yes. And actually, oh sorry. You can just stop that. You want to just stop it?
Yeah.
That's fine. Sorry about that. In fact, if I am somewhere where I really need to get something drawn quickly, I usually use a brush, because it goes on for longer.
And you can make big fat lines with it too, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, just turn. You can just turn this off. Sorry. Right. Yeah. Turn the whole thing off. Yes, you can go on for longer, because when you want to do something sort of important and quickly, there might not even be time to dip the brush. Sorry, to dip the pen.
Dip the pen, right. But also drawing like swooping lines and gestural lines, they're just easier with a brush, right?
Yes.
Because it likes to draw, I mean, pens like to draw straight lines more than round
I suppose
lines.
you could say, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think some of my sort of brush lines are quite straight. They sort of come in different shapes and sizes, really. So this is getting a little bit confused. So these are the pens that are right in the foreground, which are mine.
Right, so you're drawing these things that are right here in the present, I mean in the foreground.
Yeah.
Almost the same amount of degree of sort of detail as things that are 15 feet away from us.
Yeah, so this is where you start to see that here are some brushes, but also here are some brushes. So, and they're sort of they've got a little sort of relationship.
Right, a connection,
Yeah. In fact, I once went to the studio school in New York and did a wonderful thing, which I'm sure people know about, called the drawing marathon.
Yeah, that's what, is it a month long?
No, it's just a couple of weeks, I think, maybe 3.
But it's sort of 8 or 10 hours a day, right?
Yes, but the really important thing you learn, it's sort of like you learn one thing, which is the relationship between things. And I really recommend it. It's really
I've looked at it a
amazing
few
thing.
times, and I've had this fantasy of doing it for myself, but I'm terrified.
Oh no, don't be scared. No, you should definitely do it. Also, I think it's exciting to draw at a much bigger scale. If you normally go.
So they take out
Sketchbook.
huge rolls of butcher paper,
Yeah.
and they draw with big blobs of charcoal.
Yes.
Yeah?
Or I guess you could use anything really.
And is it from the model, a lot of the things?
I seem to remember partly the model, but also I think just a still life.
Now, I mean, you studied art, when you were much younger. Do you?
Can't really see this. Sorry. Maybe I should go. I'm drawing my Higgins ink. Carry on.
But do you? And so, do you still go and do things to sort of re-educate yourself, or to change your perspective, or to have new experiences that might kind of shake things up, or do you feel like you sort of know what you need to know?
Oh no. Well, the thing that I'm really interested in doing, if I only had more time to concentrate on it, is oil painting. which is so fascinating if you are used to drawing, because it's like learning a different instrument. If you can read music but you take up a violin if you already play the clarinet, that's the difference. But you understand the language, but it's a completely different way of drawing, of working. So it's very exciting.
Now you use color, you use watercolor primarily, right?
Yes, and gouache.
And gouache.
Yeah.
So do you think of what you do as still drawing, even though you're adding color, or do you think of that as painting?
Yes. No, well...
So are you doing colored drawings, essentially? Or?
I don't know, is there a law to say that drawing is monotone?
I believe there is a law, yeah, and you could easily get into a lot of trouble if you violate the...
Yeah, I've been breaking the law for years then, because I'm always calling the things drawings.
Well, hopefully nobody's watching this, and nobody
No.
will know. But what do you think is the difference between what you would call drawings and paintings? Is it line?
I think line has got to be the thing, because a drawing, it's the implement you use, isn't it? So it is a finer implement.
But you use a brush.
Yeah, but generally speaking, a drawing involves this. Well, I don't know. Maybe we don't have to. We don't have to distinguish.
Well, I actually.
But I mean, I think we know what we're talking about. If you have a brush and some oil paint, it is a very different thing you're going to be doing, because you are not going to be concentrating on lines nearly so much as tone and colour.
Mm-hmm.
That's and so that's the difference, really.
I find, since I've been drawing on the iPad for a couple of years, that it's really changed how I think about what I make, from being about line drawings that I'm coloring in some way,
Mm-hmm.
to thinking in terms of big chunks of shape that are colored. And that line is almost like a last thing that kind of helps to focus it a bit, but it's really, when I look at things now, I think kind of progressively from the biggest shapes to more and more detail over time. And I'm really starting with, like, what are the big things that I'm seeing first, and what kind of other relationships between color. And it's really made me think about color so much more than I had when I was drawing, even using watercolor. I'm so much more aware of all the different colors and how they relate to each other. Maybe it's because I just have more control over it.
Yeah, well, control, what do you mean?
I think I'm not that proficient with watercolor that I can easily knock out the exact color I want.
Oh, I see.
In the exact way, and have it have the right relationship to another color that I'm going to put on, and that it's going to behave in a certain way when I lay them down.
Yes.
Whereas with the iPad, you have the building blocks, but they're infinite because there's an infinite number of colors, but each color is kind of a pure color. Whereas with watercolor, I find it, I mean, gouache, you can get flat patches of color.
Yeah.
But with watercolor, there's so many things within each brush stroke, right? So many different densities and stuff.
I mean, in a way, that's the beauty of it. The fact that you look at those colours, those tubes of paint, and you think how many different things could be done with it.
Right.
And you don't know what's going to happen. Whereas I think that's what I like about it, as opposed to the iPad, the mechanical way, because you have to choose, and actually, whereas the things that happen by mistake, that's probably the difference. You might pick up a brush that's by mistake been in some orange, and suddenly some of that orange gets on the picture, and actually it looks good, right, but you didn't decide to do it. So there's more chance for sort of things to go wrong, which is really part of it, really.
Yeah,
not to go wrong, but sort of what's the word? Sort of
serendipity.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I have discovered ways with the iPad actually of creating serendipity by laying a single color on top of everything and then doing something to the nature of that color so it affects all the colors underneath it, but you never know quite what's going to happen when you do. You know, and that can have some of the same effects as watercolor, in the sense of when two colors pull together and they form some new color and you don't know what's going to happen. So yeah, there's bits like that. So you've never drawn in your studio before?
No.
Did it just never occur to you?
No, it never occurred to me until today.
I forced you into this situation.
So now I'm going to try and do these paintings that are standing up against.
So there's a shelf there with some paintings that you can hardly see what's on them actually because of the glare, but
they're sort of leaning
shapes,
up against the wall. And I think perspective is very important actually. Also, so this line is quite key to get that right.
Do you think you did get it right?
Pretty much, I think. Sometimes you can check the angle by putting a horizontal. You know, you can see whether the angle. Of course, it's all down to your eye. You know, so you can decide where your eye is.
So you must think about perspective a lot, obviously, because you draw landscapes and urban landscapes where you have a lot of buildings receding to the.
Yeah, exactly.
How much do you think about the laws of perspective and vanishing points and all those kinds of things? Is that something that you have an awareness of while you're drawing?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the what I want to do in drawing the city is to portray what it feels like to be there on that spot, in that spot, and your eyes level is that eye. That's the eye that is the eye. Therefore, you know, the eye level is terribly important.
The viewer's being you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you get it wrong, what's wrong with getting it wrong?
Well, it's not going to sort of feel like being there anymore. It's going to feel like someone else's view, perhaps, or like an architect's view. You know, like when an architects show a kind of perspective. I saw a proposed building the other day, actually a massive development that the architects had done a sort of artist's view, but it was from a view that you'd never ever see. You know, a bird might see it momentarily. In other words, it was from sort of a high angle that you'd never see, and so it's just different. So I like to draw from the perspective of my own eye. Yeah, that's the reason really.
I find
and how everything relates to that.
I find though that you don't want to go too far. I mean, I see people, you know, Washington Square Park next to my house. I see people drawing the arch a lot, and the students will come and they have T-squares with them, and they're, you know, drawing up grids and they're doing all this stuff, and then it just makes the drawings look really cold and
true.
There's none of them in it. So
that's true, but I don't think that you have to be using a ruler, certainly, and it's just to do with the angle. It's really just to do with the vanishing point, which isn't, you don't have to do with a ruler, you just have to be aware of it.
Right.
You know, you can just say, okay, here's my vanishing point, okay, there's the point. If we use this, actually the point is about here.
I mean, you can just take a few lines, like you can take the top of that partition, and then you can take this
so
thing,
it's like
and
here.
that'll help you to figure it out. So
and so if there were, so if I was doing this floor, say this, well, so then this is actually correct, you see, so this is the line of the floor, and it leads up to there.
Right. But
that's all you need to do to make it look like that space.
Like all those planes are in the same space as
Yeah.
opposed to being separated. But like when you drew this line here,
Mm.
you didn't really do that, but yet you intuitively got it right.
Yeah, because I'm a genius.
Yeah.
I can just do it.
So if you're not a genius,
it's really
just never
hard.
mind.
Give up.
Yeah.
As Jack Black says in
I'm telling
School
people
of
that all the
Rock.
time.
Give up.
Yeah, I tell people that all the time. Just stop.
No.
It's never going to work. You're never
Just
gonna,
kidding.
You're never going to be good.
It's just a thing. No, it's just a question of looking. As I say, if you put the pen against that line, and then you sort of transfer it down, you'll get to the same.
Right.
You'll get to the
I
same.
mean, a lot of times it's
end.
just like, is it going down or is it going up? Just.
Oh yeah,
'cause,
exactly.
I mean, those are the things that people seem to get wrong. Which
Yeah.
is like both the top and the bottom are both going up when one should
Exactly.
be going down. Those kinds of.
All you need to do is get the horizontal, put it in front of your eye, and see whether the line is going down or
But that's
up.
just observation. That's not.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily about thinking hard about all the vanishing points and all the grid that sits underneath it. But it's just saying to yourself, I should be looking at things and not assuming that I know where it should be going. I should look at it.
Exactly.
And it goes back to what you were saying at the beginning, where you're drawing what you see as opposed to what you made up.
Yeah,
You know,
or what you
think
think
it
in
should look like.
advance.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So perspective you could live without knowing the rules at all, as long
Yeah.
as you're looking. I mean, I think when you think about early paintings like Giotto and things that happens almost before they formalize the laws of perspective.
Yeah.
Those things are often off in lots of ways, but that's because they were kind of drawing from their imagination. They weren't looking at
No.
anything when they were drawing angels and
Yes.
stuff like that. So again, if they had observed too, they probably would have known that things are smaller when they're further away and
Yeah.
lines recede and so forth.
Exactly. It was more symbolic. But what I love looking at in the early Renaissance is the little landscapes and things in the background
Mhm.
that are sort of they're
Behind the people.
decorative, but
Yeah.
you can see that they actually were drawing from life, really.
Right.
So they were sort of doing both.
Like the Mona Lisa has that huge elaborate mountain range, which
Yeah.
it looks kind of like he made it up, or maybe he drew so many mountains that he knew exactly.
Yeah, it's
And
a
of
good
course he was a
question.
genius.
I don't know whether anyone has figured out
Probably in his sketchbook.
where that was. He might have, yes,
He might have
quite.
drawn. I know he drew landscapes, and he must have drawn from observation. But yeah, but he was Da Vinci, so.
Yeah. But I mean, this is the thing. I don't think it depends what you want to do. This thing about looking very hard and getting it right is if that's what you want to do, but you don't have to. It's just that it's whether you want to, kind of thing.
Well, there's a pleasure in it too, right? I mean, there's a pleasure in the looking and in the
Yes.
reproduction of what you're seeing.
Yes, definitely.
I mean, usually you're not talking to me when you're doing it, so you're probably able to concentrated state.
Yes, I mean, I do. If I talk to students, I do try to tell them to not go off in little twos and have a chat
Right.
while they're working. Really, is better to concentrate. I don't know whether you've experienced being able to remember exactly what you were listening to when you did a certain drawing.
I remember the
Because-
temperature. I can
Yeah.
remember
Oh, really?
what I ate for lunch. I can remember what I was sitting on and what it felt like. Yeah, and it's weird because I can walk down the street in New York and see the top of a building and say, I remember the day that I did that.
Yes.
And it could be
Amazing,
8 years
isn't it?
ago. you know.
Yeah. Really
My theory is that
amazing.
it's like with a computer or with a photograph that you have the choice to register something in high definition,
Mhm.
and it has much more information in the pixels, much higher resolution pixels. That it's sort of like that you are recording so much information, and as you're recording all this visual information, you're bringing along with it all your sensory information.
Yeah.
So you're also recording what you're hearing and smelling and so forth.
I think it's sort of because you can't help listening, really. I mean, it's hard to switch your mind off one sense it would be strange if we could switch off a sense completely.
But a lot of times when you're concentrating and somebody talks to you, you don't necessarily hear what they say, right?
No, I suppose not.
So I think it's maybe there's a different part of your brain.
Well, I mean, it certainly is distracting because it's distracting from the bit of your brain that's working.
Right.
So that's the reason for not talking and chatting, I think.
Yeah. But we're doing it anyway. So.
Well, yeah, this is a special.
It's a very
special
very
day.
special drawing.
Special case.
I want to ask you a bit about your process when you decide to go out and do a drawing. So, like, do you have a plan usually where you're going to go and what you're going to do when you get there? I mean, I know a lot of times you've been commissioned by somebody to do a particular thing sometimes, but when you go out, do you, like, how prepared are you? How much thought have you put into it? And, like, can you tell me a bit about the process of, like, where you're going to sit? Do you bring furniture with you? Do you have folding stools? Do you have... Just tell me about what a typical kind of I'm going out to draw sort of situation would be like.
Well, there's two varieties of that. One is I might have actually seen a view from, say, a moving bus or a car, or I might have seen a view that I think that is something to draw. So the process would be just simply going there and doing it. But the other way of that works is if I get a commission and somebody says, can you go and draw this
Times Square at midnight or something, yeah.
Or whatever it might be. And, well, for example, I used to have to draw a restaurant every week for a newspaper, for a restaurant review, and I'd never have seen that place. So the key thing was the choosing where to draw in that place that would give the right, well, that would be the best place to sit. So that was a question of the choice of place, the precise place where you sit.
So you sit across the street, under a tree, behind a...
Or inside, you know, what would be the best way to sort of sum up this place.
Right. And you also didn't want all the drawings to sort of look like just the flat front of a building. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that was fun because I had to do one every week. They couldn't be the same thing every week,
angle,
so they had to. So sometimes I was even in the kitchen and things. But the point is that I had to get something out of that view. But normally, where I go out and do a picture for myself, I've already seen something that I find really fascinating, and it just is something I want to draw.
And what kind of a thing would it be? Would it be like an interesting lettering on a sign, or the
It's difficult to. You can't really.
So it's like a complicated roof thing, or interesting.
It's just.
Window.
It could be. In a way, it's the composition as a whole. It's the whole scene. It's the whole, for some reason, or some detail. But usually, if it's a detail, it's with, something else that's also, juxtaposed with it.
Right.
So, for example, I've got this picture of behind the Puck building.
In an alley? By the library?
Yeah. What library?
The library now right behind the Puck building. That's my library, so that's why I know it. Yeah.
Oh, well, there's a little tiny alley, and it's got these amazing old shutters, the building at the back.
Yes, it is. They're black metal shutters.
And they're obviously very old.
Right,
you see them very, very in old photographs. And so there's those, but also there's looking down that alley, which is much more of a general compositional effect of looking down that alley.
So once you have that in mind, you say,
that's the sort of starting. So there's a very clear starting point.
So there's something about this that interests you, and part of what you're doing in drawing is sort of trying to capture it, but also trying to figure it out, really.
You have to figure out
what it is.
Exactly. Because I think this is the thing. If you go and you think it's all, it's going to be much more interesting if you've got to work stuff out while you're doing it.
I had this experience yesterday. So we were in this train station in Amsterdam waiting to get on the train to come here. And we were sitting at a table and we'd finished eating lunch and I was looking out the window and there are these two high up windows in this restaurant and through them you could see the iron beams that hold up the railroad station. And some of them were very old and they had different colored like painting on them, gold lines on them, and they also had these really big sort of grommet things that went up and they were interesting. But then behind it there was the whole distant part of the train station that had all these other lines going through it.
Oh wow, sounds really good.
So I decided to draw that and it was fun because I looked at it and I thought like this is interesting and it looks, I like drawings that are almost like a crossword puzzle where you're trying, like you've got this part and then this intersects that and this goes that way and this thing, you know, and that's what it was about. So I had a general sense of what it was going to be like and why it was interesting, but then I spent a lot of time working out those angles. And then our train came at almost like a really crucial moment. Our train was coming. We had to rush out, but I did manage to sort of more or less get it done.
Oh, have you got that? Let's have a look.
I'll show you. I haven't really looked at it since I did it, so let's see if it's any good.
Oh yeah, that's really interesting.
So there's some stuff that's like really close, and then there's this stuff that was very.
Are you showing that?
Yeah, this is.
Are you going to show that? Wait.
Anyway, this is. Yeah, you can hold it up to the camera there. Actually, no, put it here. There you go.
Oh no, I think it's
I don't want to
better
get
to
it
the
wet.
camera.
Yeah, I don't want to get it wet. Go ahead. Yeah, hold it up to. But there's a camera right there, so you can.
Oh right. Oh sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can see there's like
Lana
there's
must
stuff
go.
that's close up, and then there's sort of ornamental stuff, and then there's the stuff that's far away, and some of it was really far away in that building. So yeah, that was like 15 or 20 spent minutes.
That definitely gives the impression of the distance.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and in the foreground you've got this real detail.
Yeah, and these like the different kinds of the metal and stuff like that. Yeah. And there's a bit of a lighting thing going on, but it was pouring with rain, so the light was pretty flat. But yeah. So anyway, so you say you this alley in the Puck building. What do you tell me about what you do? What gear do you take with you? Do you have like a standard kind of stuff you always take with you when you go out to draw? Or?
Yes, just the board, which is large.
So you have a drawing board, and
Yeah.
you have your paper like bulldog clipped onto it.
Yeah. So it's usually about 80 centimeters wide.
So you don't draw in a sketchbook. You're always drawing. On
No,
flat
it's
bits of
always
paper.
quite large.
So you have to
pieces.
walk around with this big board and,
Yeah.
and your bag. And do you have a stool or something?
Yeah, I have a stool, but sometimes I stand up, just because it feels it's really strange. But sometimes there can be a big difference between the view standing up and sitting down.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's slightly more dynamic from a little bit higher up.
Right.
So I have to stand up.
And you have to hold the board if you're standing up.
But the board is made of mount board. What do you call it? Foam core.
So it's not.
Yeah.
It's not heavy.
No, it's not. You could stand there all day. You can stand there all day. That's.
You're holding
very
it with one
important.
hand, resting pushed against you, and then you're drawing
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
Seems awkward.
The
I guess I've done it with a sketchbook often enough now.
the ink is held with the same hand that the
The board is.
yeah.
I see.
This is blue sky. There's something going on here that isn't. That's difficult, which is the fact that the bar across the window
Yeah.
is exactly the same height
As that wall back there.
as the wall. So we're never going to really
Right.
see the wall properly.
So there's a brick wall back here.
Yeah,
And
with
then
a
there's a bar that
railway.
goes across the window, but there's probably like 20 feet in between those two, but it looks like they're kind of the same.
Exactly. It's quite.
Yeah, 'cause there's a
That's
real-
quite difficult.
Yeah, all this noise you guys have been hearing has been because there's literally a train track right there that is and trains would pass by periodically. So sorry about that, but it makes for an interesting environment. Now there must be a lot of situations that you've gotten into because you're drawing out in the elements, people, those sorts of things. Is that, or are you able to just kind of chameleon yourself into the background so nobody really is paying attention to you? Or do people come up and say, what are you up to?
Oh, just, yeah, people come up. I think people usually realise you're in the middle of work, so it's not as if they start talking for a long time. And if they start talking, it's usually a very simple conversation about possibly their art experience. Yeah, quite often. And just what are you drawing and why are you doing it and things, but just sort of very kind of simple questions that are quite understandable.
I mean, because a lot of students ask us, how do you deal with the fact that you're drawing in public, and a lot of them find it to be a very kind of stressful thing. Like, I'm out there, and are people going to be judging what I'm doing, and are they going to think I'm pretending to be an artist when I'm not really one? I mean, obviously you don't have those problems because you are a licensed professional, but I think it is something that makes people worry about even doing it.
Well, I don't think that's necessary to worry. I mean, it's easy to say that, but there's no kind of badge if you're a licensed professional. That doesn't really matter at all. It depends. I think it really depends on how much you want to draw this picture. If you really want to draw it, it doesn't really matter what is going on. You just want to do it, and that's the starting point. And as for whether you should be allowed to, well, it's a free country, so just go ahead and try to overcome.
These people are in America, so maybe they have a different feeling about it.
Well, it's not a free country. Sure. Anyway, no, but honestly, I think just don't worry.
I mean, have you ever had an unpleasant situation because of you been drawing?
The only thing I've ever had happen is when I was in Soho, London, and some kids tried to distract me and take my bag. And this was actually when I was at college, so it was a super long time ago. But I can honestly say that's the only difficulty. In fact, one other time I was in New York, and where I was sitting there was some issue about, there was a lady who didn't want me to sit in that particular place. But that's all.
I had some kids take my book when I was in Jerusalem. I was drawing in the old city. Yeah. And these kids got very aggressive about it. I think they just wanted money. You know, and like one of them was like, "Let me see your drawing," and took it, and kind of it was like sort of like throwing it friend to friend, but you know, they gave it back eventually. That was the only time I've ever had anything weird happen. But
I don't think it's enough to stop you really from doing it, though. You know, It's not like every single time you go outside someone's going to hassle you.
If somebody steals your drawing, you know, if you hadn't done the drawing, you wouldn't have it either. It's kind of the way I look at it. Right?
Yeah, well, you have to, yes, quite. You have to be quite philosophical about that.
Yeah. So. Well, good. Well, I think we will stop this, and maybe you'll carry on doing this drawing, but
I think I've just the one more line I need to do.
So I'm sorry if this wasn't technically a perfect situation, but I think it was really interesting to watch Lucy draw this, at least it was for me, and have this conversation. So I'm sorry that I wasn't able to really kind of respond to what you guys have said, but I'll share the final picture, or wherever it is that Lucy ends up with it, and I'll show you that as well. And next week I'll be back in Amsterdam, where I'm going to be for a couple more weeks. So I will be in the studio in Amsterdam by myself, and we will do some other kind of drawing then. So, and if you did any drawings of your room while you were doing this, I'd love to see them. So please share them. And you can hashtag them, draw with me, so that I'll know where to find them. But thanks very much. And if you have any questions here that you've posted in your comments, maybe I'll go over them with Lucy now, and I'll write down anything that she said that seems worth sharing with you guys based on if you have specific, like what kind of pens, sort of kinds of questions. We'll try to get to them. Thanks very much, guys. And I'll see you again next week. And thank you, Lucy. Thanks for doing this. I sprung this on you.
Yeah, it's the best way to do it, really. I didn't have too long to get scared.
Exactly. I know, it is scary. It is scary. Drawing is scary. I tell people that all the time. Try to avoid doing it whenever you can.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to turn this off now. Thank you, guys, and see you next week.